Quack, 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 quack. No! Hell was that?
Every time I'm muted. Every single time, I swear. All right. Anyways, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Oregon Ducks Live here on the Voice of College Football, the Oregon channel. Today we got a special guest here. We have Zach of Locked On UCLA from the Locked On Network here to talk Bruins. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
No, we appreciate you. Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time. We know, it's hard to schedule shows sometimes, especially on the fly a little bit. But so we appreciate all the time that you can give tonight. How you doing,
It's all
Spaz?
good.
Too? I don't want to forget about you, Spaz. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm just looking forward to a nice little comfortable weekend. Shouldn't be too difficult of a challenge this week.
Ouch.
Sorry,
Wow.
Zach, but
Wow. Ouch.
Hopefully not. So we'll see.
Well, that's it. This is for Oregon, their first technically first Big Ten game, but against a very familiar foe. Whereas UCLA has already had the run-in with Indiana. That didn't go too well. Did not go with how UCLA was hoping that would go. Is there any real concerns this weekend in your mind, Spaz or Zach, for each team? Like, what are we going to see? Because I'm looking at the line right now. Oregon's, I think it's now minus 25.5.
Oh, it keeps growing.
On the road. I'm not sure I buy 25.5 necessarily on the road, but familiar foes again.
Wild.
This is Pac-12 after dark too at its finest.
Yeah, Pac-12, Big Ten after dark. Can't wait for it. I think the big thing is if Oregon plays like they did a couple weeks ago in the opener against Idaho, where they're just running into each other with the line, doing dumb things, just getting boat raced at times by Boise State, then UCLA could make a game of it. And UCLA looked a lot more. They looked a little bit more impressive when they played LSU last weekend. It's just if Oregon plays like they did in the rivalry game against Oregon State, where they put it together in that second half, then UCLA is in for a long night where if they can't rush the quarterback, if they can't protect their quarterback, the trenches is where they're a little weak this year and haven't proven that they can compete these last 2 weeks. It would be a long time for one quarterback getting punched in the mouth, literally, right? Just back and forth. And then you got another quarterback who will have all day to throw.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, the one thing that I would say that Oregon does have going for it, but also negative, is that, like you said, the O-line finally kind of put it together. Like they finally found a starting lineup. A negative, though, is that we apparently have lost Bedford again as he got injured or retweaked, whatever his injury exactly was this last week. And we were really hoping to get him back on the line, but I don't think he's going to be going in this game either. They're going to save him, I'm guessing, Spaz.
Yeah, I'm thinking probably going to save him for the Ohio State game. Hopefully he can come back by that.
So, yeah, I think personally for me, I think it is a lot of just Oregon, don't get in your own way. Just don't screw up. Like, don't be letting free rushers sack Gabriel, because I've seen so many sacks this season. It's not normal, compared to watching the last 2 years, especially.
Well, let me tell you, you have Oregon, who's like, all right, they never sacked, they never got to Bo Nix, and then this year you got Dylan Gabriel, who one time was going to go to UCLA before that all changed. Then you got a UCLA team that hasn't had a sack since week 1. So if there's ever a concern, if you want your O-line to figure it out, it seems like UCLA is the team to play, because they didn't get a sack against Indiana, got out-muscled, out-manned. Similar thing against LSU in those 2 second-half drives that the Tigers went 90-plus yards. If you're concerned about your O-line, play against UCLA this year, and you might figure it out. And the only time UCLA got sacks against Hawaii week 1, they had to bring pressure from outside sources. It was not from the D-line, and that leaves the Bruins vulnerable to the extremely high completion percentage that Dylan Gabriel is going to bring to the table.
Yeah, Dylan can sling the ball and does it very accurately. That's one thing we could say is the last few Oregon quarterbacks have been very accurate with their passing, and they don't turn the ball over a lot. Although Dylan Gabriel had the fumble against Boise State, but it just doesn't happen a lot.
I mean, he is at 84% completion percentage for 914 yards. That's dumb numbers to me.
The numbers he had against Idaho, right? Like 41 for 49. That seems ridiculous, and they didn't put up a lot more points. So, but the thing is, Gabriel is still playing well, even though there are some concerns about the blitz early on. UCLA will probably blitz. I'm just not sure it'll get to him.
Yeah.
Is that the biggest concern too? Because I mean, I'm looking at Garber's numbers. I mean, they're not great. Obviously, more interceptions than touchdowns. That's never good. But is that more of an O-line issue, or is that more just him rushing and making mistakes? What do you kind of see?
It's a mixture of both. Week 1 versus Hawaii, we saw a little bit better pass protection than because UCLA, they struggled in 23 to protect the quarterback, and they went through what was now current Oregon Duck, backup Dante Moore and Ethan Garbers and Colin Shea. They went through 3 quarterbacks. Regardless of their mobility, they could not protect the quarterback. And they had a similar team offensively coming into this year with a new offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy. So you brought in Garbers, who is supposed to be this quarterback amongst the top half of the Big Ten. I think this conference is a very weak quarterback class. And I think Garbers should be amongst the upper echelon of that. He hasn't proven that with the numbers. He did make some nice plays. He's not going to be a Heisman candidate. He probably won't outplay Dylan Gabriel. He might if something goes really crazy. I don't see that the case. But a large portion of this is Garbers has to make plays. And what they did a lot last week against LSU was do rollouts, sprint rollouts, get him on the move, avoid the rush, and have short completions. But when they can keep him upright, he can usually make the right decision. Week 1 against Hawaii, he made some terrible choices. Late in the game against Indiana when the Bruins were down, he was forcing it. Last week's interception against LSU, they're down 14. It's 3rd and long in the 4th quarter. That was one of those, I have to get rid of the ball to see if we have a miracle chance to win this game, which they did not in the 4th quarter. He did fumble it, so holding on to the ball has been a bit of an issue. But I think the offense has begun to progress a little bit more as the weeks have gone by. Though you would have thought this team would be led by their offense. That hasn't been the case with only, 3 touchdowns through 3 games?
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, that's why I was like, the numbers are not great. I mean, they're not awful. The interceptions are obviously the glaring kind of factor of like, yeah, that's not good when you're giving the other team another opportunity. And I guess, what is, I guess this is for you with Jay Toya.
Jay Tuia?
Yeah, I knew I mispronounced
it's funny,
that.
There's the concern about Jay Tuia. He did play last week. I haven't seen anything this week. The concern, though, for UCLA, they announced 2 injuries on defense. Kanye Clark, the DB, and then former Oregon Duck Keanu Williams, who transferred to UCLA over a year ago. He's on that D-line. He'd be starting alongside Jay Tuia. And to this moment, I don't know anything to update Tuia. He was a little injured in practice last week. He played against LSU. Keanu Williams, out for the year. That was announced this week by head coach for UCLA, Deshaun Foster. So I see the question about Tuia. The bigger concern is Williams, who's gone for the year, Kanye Clark, the DB, and UCLA starting linebacker Ale Cajo, a former Alabama player when they won a championship. He was out last week. So you start to see they don't have a lot of depth. They have talent. Now there's different tiers of talent, right? There's national championship level talent. There's starter talent. UCLA has limited talent that can compete with Oregon. They just don't have the depth and consistency that may be able to make this game close.
Yeah.
Oregon, I can understand that too.
To fumble the ball to make this a game.
That's just don't get in your own way. And I can understand that with the UCLA thing because, of course, we know, obviously, as Oregon people, we had Chip Kelly, not the greatest recruiter in the world. And really the last years at UCLA, he didn't like to recruit much. He did not. He did not recruit at all. The big thing is this team would look better with Chip Kelly. There's no doubt about it. But the foundation was crumbling.
with Chip Kelly there, which is why they brought in Deshaun Foster, who is doing the things Chip Kelly couldn't or wouldn't do, more like the wouldn't, versus, the X's and O's haven't panned out in this switcheroo where the offense could be looking a lot better with Chip Kelly at the helm.
I can agree with
sure.
that.
I think Eric Bieniemy's a fantastic choice for OC there. There's a guy that won 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs, and so I mean, it's not like he doesn't know how to call an offense and control a game.
I was about to say, if you want an offensive mind, he's your guy. I mean, that's the type of guy you want.
And you got a coach who's never coached before. So you want 2 coordinators that you have in Kaika Malloy for UCLA to take over for Danton Lynn, who went to USC. He's been a defensive coordinator at Washington, so limited capacity there. And then Eric Bieniemy, Colorado, offensive coordinator at the Chiefs, got his chance with the Commanders, now comes to UCLA. I think that's the right name, the right voice to really impact this program, but the numbers haven't gone there. And if you look deeper, when he was a college coordinator, I don't think they really backed them up to be superb, and it's been really complicated. The Bruins, leading up to the Indiana game, I was reading in the LA Times, there is guys going to the quarterback's room to study during a bye week to still figure out the offense in the season.
Ooh. Well, and Bieniemy's though, his offenses though are pretty complex. There's a lot of moving parts and stuff, and without that, like you say, maybe the higher tier talent.
The Pat Mahomes, the best player in the world.
Yeah. And also one off season to try to install it fully. You can still see progress maybe later in the year, but like you say, without depth too, is kind of like, So hopefully he has to figure a way to simplify it.
Deshaun Foster in the end? I mean, can he rejuvenate this program in the next 4 or 5 years?
I think the big question is, will the fan base back him, right? We're all frustrated. I was I believe, in my personal opinion, I backed Chip as long as I could. And then I was probably one of the UCLA pundits, fans, people who covered the Bruins that backed him longer than most UCLA fans. They hated him for years earlier. They wanted him gone. And that hadn't really been proven until this last year when the recruiting was god-awful. So then he leaves. UCLA could have had any coach. Maybe not any coach, but they had a chance to get some top guys out there that were available or were going to be available, right? From the Jed Fishes, from the Jonathan Smiths. Those are just the West Coast options from former Pac-12 rivals, now Big Ten rivals in some cases. Deshaun Foster was beloved by all the guys. When they announced him, they didn't know he was going to be the head coach. The entire team swarmed him. Guys who have left, guys who have stayed. They loved the hire. They were even tweeting, hey, Deshaun Foster for head coach. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't realize that was the case. Some were thinking they should hire the Nebraska defensive coordinator, right? They should go hire Tony White. They flirted with PJ Fleck, who's not really having the best season right now with Minnesota. Deshaun's a UCLA guy, and he's young. He's got energy, but will the fan base give him the time and energy? On my podcast, people are pretty much done with football right now. They're just done. And it's 3 weeks in. They're 1-2. They've lost to an Indiana team that looks really good. I can't, until they prove otherwise, they've looked really good on paper and on film and on the field. And then you've got LSU on the road in Death Valley. Nobody's going to fault you for that, even though they had a chance to win that game. And I think I saw a question on the ticker there. Yes, LSU did look overrated, but they're still better than UCLA is this year. And playing in Death Valley is one of the toughest atmospheres in the country. So they're going to be big underdogs too.
Yeah, I definitely. I think most teams going to LSU are going to be, especially under a first-year coach who doesn't really have coaching experience. I mean, obviously he was a player and all that. So of course UCLA, that's his home. Of course, I think it's kind of a smart move as a stand-in, but that's the long term. Is he? I think Spencer asked it to you. Actually, I was watching some of that from yesterday's show with Spencer. Is he in kind of over his head though? I mean, especially year one, it's a lot to ask going to a new conference and
that's
putting
brutal.
Together
If this was the Pac-12, I think it would be, it could be same old. You're familiar. Mind you, Deshaun Foster was kind of creeping up there in the coaching ranks inside the UCLA locker room, but he dipped. He was going to go work with Antonio Pierce and the Raiders and be the running backs coach there. So he had already dipped and then came back. He's been with UCLA. He's been in the program. But week one, there's some weird decisions, right? The first drive of the season, You had a UCLA team that had 9 players on the field to field a punt. Hawaii's punter goes out there and is like, there's 9 players. I'm running for a first down, calling my own number. When normally you don't want your own punter to call your own number, but then you see there's 9 guys, I'm getting a first down. UCLA doesn't recognize that. Now that's part of special teams coordinating, and that's also head coach got to see there's 9 guys who got to call timeout. And first down timeouts don't mean that much. Week 1, weird things happen. They didn't go for it in certain fourth down spots, and then his answers probably weren't the most enthusiastic. Not that they're bad or anything, but they didn't really rise up a lot of energy and enthusiasm to be like, all right, this is what he was dealing with and understanding in week 1. So there were some poor decisions. But then last week, I thought it was a cleaner game because I was there in Baton Rouge to watch this game. It looked cleaner. They decided to be a little more conservative in spots. When they're down 7-0, they go for it 4th and 2 at midfield. I think he's starting to get it. But the problem is some of what he might want to do is based on this team not being talented enough. So it's almost like you think about it, you're like, okay, right, this is what I'd want to do as a coach. But you also have to read your team. And all we've been saying is this offense is going to be, all the UCLA people, myself included, Eric Bieniemy's offense is going to be fantastic. So you'd expect maybe a riverboat gambler, right? The Chiefs, they like to go for it, do weird things on 4th down, right? You got an aggressive guy that likes to throw the ball. Maybe Deshaun Foster could do that. But if the team can't protect the quarterback, they can't go all-out blitz and stop the opposition, you got to find the happy medium for your team. So he might be in over his head because he doesn't know what his team has yet, and we don't know what this team looks like. On paper, they're weird, but getting better.
Yeah, like Ben was saying earlier, come later in the year, this might be a different team come week 7, 8.
And I mean, you can look at Oregon. You can go, oh my, look at talent. Those first 2 weeks did not look very talented. I mean, now I give credit more. I think Idaho is still one of those really great FCS teams, and they're going to give you everything they got. And that team was just a mess that first week. Boise State is a playoff contender at the G5. And we've never beaten Boise State until this year. So it's kind of like one of those, it's almost like a rivalry game. It's like a curse. I mean,
now it's going to be a Pac-12 Big Ten rivalry, right?
Yeah, it's like. Yeah, so it's like, it's one of those things, but with Oregon State, but the same thing with Oregon State, finally the team looked like they put it together. But I have to see more. I need to see that another week and then another week. If I see it for 2 or 3 games in a row, then I'm going to be like, okay, this team has finally figured it out. But if we go to UCLA and Gabriel gets sacked 4 or 5 times or throws a few picks or something like that, or just gets in our own way and it turns into this sloppy 2017 game or something like that.
Game, yeah.
It's like, then I'm going to be like, we really have problems. Like, really have problems.
Yeah, if Gabriel is getting sacked a few times, that'd be bad.
Well, yeah, especially after you just, at least the O-line, again, looked like they put it together. They finally kind of figured out the lineup, and they went, okay, this works. But, yeah, and that's why I say, as long as Oregon doesn't get in their own way, it shouldn't be that way. But if it is, again, then I'm going to sound the alarms for the Ducks for this season. Because
they were week 1 and week 2. Those alarms were loud and blaring.
So do you travel with the team, Zach, or?
I don't travel. The first game I got to go to, my dad and I, we'd seen the UCLA LSU game, and that was like, a trip you want to go to. And obviously this is before all the cool Big Ten trips, right, with Penn State and everything. So the LSU one was one we'd wanted to go to. And then we're like, should we not? And then he's like, all right, I booked it. Let's go. So it was a nice father-son trip, and we got to go tailgate. We started in New Orleans. And then it was fun because the Saints, they actually hosted the Eagles. So I got to walk down Bourbon Street. Next day we go to Baton Rouge. We were there for a couple of days, go in the tailgate, be with the people, right? There's different ways. You can be the press box. I like to be amongst the people. Maybe that'll change in the future. But I like to be with the people at the moment. I don't travel with the team. Maybe I'll go on more trips in the future. But LSU, that's one you circle on the calendar. You're like Death Valley. It wasn't a night game. It was really hot. It was still 100,000 grumpy, hot, sweaty people, but it's LSU. They were nice and they fed us. They gave us drinks, all the happy things. But I don't officially travel with the team, but it was fun to go see them play at LSU live and see Tiger Stadium. There's nothing like it.
Oh wow! So you got to do the Saints as well.
I didn't go to the Saints game, but then coming back Sunday, we were walking down Bourbon Street again. We're like, all right, what's it like? And an NFL Sunday in New Orleans, let me tell you, it's crazy. You go to Baton Rouge, but then you come back because on Thursday there were some UCLA fans who started in New Orleans and then did that tourist stuff and then went to the college town. The Eagles fans invaded New Orleans. Up and down, it was all green, right? You got your great. No, it was Eagle chants, Eagles, just all over the place. It was nuts. And it was pumped on a Sunday night. Of course, it's a city that never sleeps. I know there's New York, but New Orleans, they say the party keeps going even if it's not Mardi Gras. It's true. It's 1,000% true. And on an NFL Sunday night, if you have a chance to go, it's crazy.
I live in Houston. I used to work about an hour outside of New Orleans. I've been there multiple times. No matter when you go,
crazy.
Yeah, no matter when you go on Bourbon Street, there's always something happening. There's a good question. So UCLA is actually 90th recruiting or around there. Is that true?
I'm not sure they're 90th. I haven't taken a quick gander. This year's team was horrible. Like their recruiting numbers are horrible. I thought this year, heading into the 25 class, last I checked, it was in the 40, 50s. And I've been looking a little more basketball recruiting lately. But I'm pretty sure the football team in the class of 25 is trending upward. Now, all these different classes are getting commits, so it's going to flip-flop. We don't even know, like, there's the later signing day. There's still transfers to get. So there's still a lot to do. I'm not sure if they're 90th. I have to really check on that. It's been a minute since I've talked recruiting. I mean, UCLA's 2 top recruits in the class of 25 are currently transferring high schools mid-football season to play with 2 different high schools in the same football season. So that's nuts. What does Foster need to do? He's already doing it. Recruit SoCal. There's certain states across the country where if you just recruit in your backyard, right? You're thinking Texas, you're thinking LSU and Louisiana, you're Florida, right? California. You stay in your backyard and you get those guys to stay, even if they're not the 5 stars. Those guys will keep your teams competitive, right? Who is Alabama's most recent Heisman winner, right? That was the guy who went from Southern California. As much as we make fun of DJU guys, right? He was a guy from Southern California leading his high school to beat the number 1 team in the high school rankings in football, right? There's so many talented Southern California guys that UCLA just doesn't have to go that far around the country, go around their campus and recruit. Chip Kelly just didn't do that. The joke was he's gone out and recruited more as an Ohio State offensive coordinator than he went and made his face known as the head coach for UCLA, right? That's the big joke all the UCLA fans were making happen, and that's pretty much legitimate. Now, the Bruins have a new recruiting team. There was an LA Times article written by Ben Bolch, who covers UCLA, had a whole detailed report about it. The Bruins are just in their backyard because there's so many talented players. All you got to do is show you're interested, show up. And whether it's the private schools, the public schools, the charters, there are talented guys. And I know you got to get big and beefy to go to the Midwest and play in the Big Ten in the trenches. But if you don't recruit your backyard, UCLA, which they didn't, they hit in the portal. You can't only live in the portal. This isn't basketball. You can't only live in the portal. You have to build guys for a few years, keep them, and then hit the portal correctly. Then you can have a consistent program. So part 1 for Deshaun Foster's class, get these commits, keep them committed, because that's part 2, right? Keep them committed. Don't have them leave mid-year like UNLV's starting quarterback because he didn't get enough NIL dollars, or have the commitment, right, of 6 figures while they're ranked. And, like, how do you just not fight through that, right? How do you just not keep playing knowing you're going to get big?
That is a wild story. And there's so many details that have come out about, like, he got paid everything he was offered, but then he wanted more, or his agent was trying to do it. And the school's like, no, we're not doing that. That's technically illegal or something like that. And I'm like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
Now their running back is also redshirting.
Is the running back really redshirting?
The running back is redshirting now, too.
And mind you, UNLV's got bigger problems. They're trying to figure out Pac-12 Mountain West. They're not trying to figure out that's bad for college sports. I saw Tennessee have a ticket fee to get NIL directly to the athletes. I think that's a smart idea. I'm a cheapskate, so I don't like fees. I hate those ideas. But, like, that's a smart idea, a legitimate idea to get money directly funneled to the athletes for those sports. But
it's not much. It's literally like $10 to $15 or something per ticket or something like that. It's not like a ton of money or anything, but it adds up with that type of stadium. If you sell it out, that's a lot of money you're bringing in, NIL revenue wise or whatever, payment wise. But yeah, this is what the fear was of NIL, though, was stuff like this. I just never expected it would come out of UNLV.
I mean, hey, we are all worried about having professional sports in Las Vegas. Now it's the college team, but that's not really what the whole. That's not.
So Zach, question here on the recruiting situation. With everybody saying that Chip's done more as the OC at Ohio State than he did in the years at UCLA. Do you think that's financial, or do you think that's support because of the lack of support from the boosters and stuff after years?
I mean, there was probably a lack of support, but at the end of the day, you make the situation as it is. UCLA's men's basketball coach, Mick Cronin, would come out, our NIL sucks. And he said that repeatedly last season. And the team was under 500. They couldn't hit the portal. He said that for a whole year. And UCLA has arguably one of the best transfer classes, 6 guys, right, to come in. And they're going to be, I think, a top 10 team that will get to a third weekend in March into April, right, in the NCAA tournament. He just complained, went out. He went after those guys. Chip, I think he purposefully chose and did not want to do it. Now, it's not like they have the best foundational support, right? They're not the private school that USC is. They're not the South where they're just going to throw in money. It's a public UC school. So there is some legitimate questioning to it. But if he didn't even try, right, if we all know, right, that he didn't go out and now he's making his face known, then if you don't try, what are you going to do, right? It's like you're trying, here, let me try some food. Let's try this real quick. All right, do I like the French fry? Do I like the sweet potato? If you don't even try it, how do you know? And it's more with that than it is fully foundation. It's a little bit of both. But for Chip, it was so ridiculous and ludicrous. That's kind of how it is.
That's true too, because it used to be kind of the old mantra, like for USC and UCLA, is like literally you could just go throw a stone and you'd hit a 5-star, player somewhere in the vicinity. So it's not like, there's no one there, but you've got Washington, Oregon has been, grabbing those players, and now they're going, of course, now the Big Ten is open. So in a way, also, you just opened up the whole market to the Big Ten teams even more, which is.
But then UCLA can also go
trade-off.
Recruit the Midwest guys, right? They can go get those big linemen. They can go. That's where they can go tap into too, right? You go from LA, you can go recruit New Jersey, New York, go in to play Rutgers, go to the nation's capital, go to DC, go play Maryland, right? So the idea is that it opens it to everybody. But there's so much, everybody can feast. There's so much talent, everybody can feast. And now it's just for UCLA to go win those wars in other parts of the country and win the battle in the recruiting at home as well.
Yeah, it's an equal trade-off kind of, because both markets are now open kind of all over the place. Whereas, like, we know this, in Oregon, there's not that many players, like, on that level. There are a few, and they try to snag the 1 or 2 every year. But, I mean, Oregon has to go everywhere else to get players.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just how it's been. So UCLA definitely, Foster's got to figure that out though, and get going. And then this one, how is the NIL collective or collectives for the football team? Is it like good, stable? Obviously Oregon, we got Phil Knight, and the collective is pretty good for Oregon. But how is UCLA doing?
Yeah, they have the men of Westwood. It's a combo between the football team and the men's basketball team. And then if UCLA is a basketball school and you had the head men's basketball coach complaining how bad the collective is, and he's a billboard wearing the shirt, everything, UCLA did not embrace it on the football side. Chip did not embrace it. He would be like, you can't directly pay the players. That's not in the rules. Well, that's now going to be the rules pretty soon. So, and then I keep seeing, social media posts, everything, comments like, we want to give our money to basketball, So all the love's going to basketball, the history, everything's going there. And here's the thing I'll say about the UCLA football NIL collective. Jay Tuia, who we talked about earlier, he was in the portal, surprisingly, after Deshaun Foster got hired in the middle of spring practice. He was spotted going to Texas's spring football game. And, there's a difference in situation there. And with the 2-time transfer rule, you can go play anywhere. He had a chance to go be a Longhorn and be a part of that squad who is going to be a national championship contender. NIL was calling. UCLA ponied up, and within a couple of days, Deshaun was telling everybody, I think the big fella might be returning soon. So they won a war in the transfer portal to keep one of those guys, which is it's crazy that you have to go win your own guys that are currently on your roster and are committed to staying through a coaching change. But they won a miniature war with Texas trying to keep Tawia back home. That was one of their top guys in the D line that does not have a lot of depth nor talent, but they kept him and they won it. So they got enough. But now when scholarships increase, when everybody's asking for money, are they going to be able to pay everybody? Or can they keep the top dogs where it's the depth players that might go get opportunities elsewhere where UCLA loses that talent when their number one goes down, right? That is where it might hurt them later. But they have enough to go fend off Texas once. I just wonder if it'll continue to go on in the years to come for Deshaun Foster.
Yeah, exactly. That's the worry.
I think, that's a very fair point. And again, like you just said, you mentioned a bunch of things. Obviously, Deshaun Foster, first coaching, of course, head coaching job, but maybe in over his head right this moment. But will he figure it out, or does he have the right people around him to work it out? And then is the university going to be fully on board and backing the situation? Because for us as outsiders, when we were looking at Chip, we know he didn't like to recruit. We just never felt like he was like really good with the university. I know they kept him for like the extra year or whatever when they had that contract dispute or whatever, or a couple years ago or something like that. And then it just never felt like he was going to be there.
So,
long
Zach, were they going to fire him prior to the USC game?
They should have. It doesn't matter if they didn't. And I know there's been different stories. I'm not really going to tout those. Ironically, I will say I might have talked to the UCLA AD recently, just kind of accidentally bumped into him, the other day. I didn't really get into that story necessarily, but, Chip didn't want to be there, but he should have been fired. The reason Deshaun Foster is there and not somebody else is because they let Chip walk, like a jilted groom, right? A bride, whoever is leaving at the altar. That's what UCLA was. But the thing is, it's like, you should have broken up before, and then they're going to the altar, trying to make this. They're trying to renew their vows, and then the dude just leaves, right? He just leaves, and you knew he wasn't actually interested in the first place to continue long term. So what are we doing, right? That was a big mistake. Whether they didn't have the money for the buyout, because they extended his contract right before that, so everybody thinks they're stupid for extending the contract, and then all of a sudden not wanting him the next year, when the buyout could have been a lot less. And then it increased the buyout to get the coach to go into Big Ten, give him some stability and security, only for him to not want to be there, leave. And then you have slim pickings for a coach, and UCLA just chose an alumni who's a former running back to give some youthful infusion, the opposite of what it used to be with Chip Kelly. So
which
they
is a smart
fired him.
move on their part, I think. I think Deshaun Foster was a great pick for UCLA.
You're in the minority at the moment.
Really?
It seems like you're in the minority. I'm not sure there's not a lot of energy supporting it right now. It just isn't. I don't want to say he's going to get fired after 1 year.
And his history and the career he had, you would think it would be a no-brain. This is a great. Yeah, you would think the people would support that.
I think they initially did, but UCLA is a very pessimistic fan base. That's just kind of how it is. We're very negative Nancy's. You just sit there, and that's kind of how it is. Oh my goodness, we should have won the game. That's just kind of how they are. And that's just how it's been, right? We're on the coattails of a John Wooden. Haven't basketball wise, we're trying to find ways to win. The old shirt I used to wear as a kid, Champions Made Here. They don't even have the most national championships at the moment. They have the second most. They're trying to catch Stanford. But there's just this negativity, and I try to spew positivity, but then you got to say it how it is. They look bad against Indiana, who's good, but they look bad. But I want to give Deshaun some time, but I also have to be aware that they certainly screwed up by not getting rid of Chip Kelly, whether they couldn't get the donor funds to fire him then, whether they went back and forth because they beat USC, and they're like, let's just keep this coach. We're going to beat USC, and they smoked him with Caleb Williams. You had the fun. They're ringing the victory bell. And then they lose to Cal the next week, who is not better than you. That was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So they should have fired him. It was just, but he needs support. I'm just not sure publicly he's getting that at the moment from the optimistic look from a fan.
Well, and into the university. I mean, that's it. You know, when I heard that Ja'Chon Foster was the guy, it was kind of like Trent Bray with Oregon State. It was kind of a he's here, kind of like, keep the stability a little bit, known commodity. But Oregon did it too with the players doing the whole thing for Mario Cristobal back before they signed the petition. The university brought him on, and that worked out outside of multiple of those very upsetting games where he just pissed it away.
Yeah.
Is Deshaun, do you see him as a long-term thing, or do you see him more of kind of a stopgap, kind of safe choice for the university? I mean, just in a maybe honest opinion. Because I felt like he was a stopgap, kind of just like, he's here, let's run with this for a couple years and see what happens.
Well, they went his direction for a reason, right? He's fixing things that are broken. He's bringing the spring game back. They didn't have a spring game. They have more fun things to do to bring engagement to the fans. That's what they're lacking, right? They hired more of a CEO, it seems like, than a coach. And imagine if Chip Kelly was the coach and they had a CEO who would oversee, like, all right, let's talk. But he's not a big talker. So it's tough for a CEO who's not the big bombastic type of guy to go out there and spread the message, when we saw what happened at Big Ten Media Day, where he's not the big talker guy, right? And as much as they say he didn't prepare, sometimes I fumble over my words. And I do this all the time, right? I can get nervous. He's just not a big talker. But with how he was given love by the players, he connects. He connects. And while it's not loudly in front of people, screaming with cameras in front of him with microphones, he connects, which is important.
Most important place in the locker room.
Yeah, and that's what Chip didn't necessarily do, or it kind of was wavering at the end. But here's one thing to know. UCLA just hired a new chancellor. They have an interim, and the new chancellor is coming in January. The AD's been there for 4, soon to be about 5 years, right? He was hired in 2020. He helped orchestrate the move with the former chancellor, who is the big top dog at UCLA, to move to the Big Ten. So, and this is a guy who's coming from Miami. Julio Frank raised a lot of money to get Miami, up to date with the funds football-wise. It's a private school, smaller private school, not a public UC school in the California systems. There's a new chancellor. And if he says something and he wants to flex his muscle and if he wants to make something change, then that might be the end for the UCLA AD, Martin Germont. I'm not saying that is, but the person at the top, and that might have the trickle-down effect. We might see a complete clean of house. Or if he sees and embraces the vision and people stay committed, and their support, they're making money football-wise, then they might let this ride out. But the new chancellor comes in January. They did swear in an interim recently, but the new one comes in pretty soon, and he might want to get his fingers in on this situation.
I could see that.
So who do you see at the game Saturday? More UCLA or more Oregon fans?
Well, I think they'll be fair enough. I'm not sure they'll completely be overrun. I've been looking at ticket prices. They've been fluctuating, right? It'll be because Oregon, they've been to the Rose Bowl, right? They played in the Rose Bowl game. They've seen UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Game day was there a few years ago. It's been a few years since they played at the Rose Bowl, so I think Oregon fans are jonesing to get back to Pasadena. It's a fun little tailgate area. Pasadena is a beautiful spot to want to watch a game. I love the Rose Bowl. I know some people maybe don't like it. I think it's beautiful. I'm extremely biased from living in SoCal, growing up near it, going to the Rose Parade, and being a UCLA fan. I think it's one of the best venues of all time. It could be filled up, certainly. I can attest to that. Will there be more Oregon fans? Maybe, since it's been a few years since they've been to the Rose Bowl, we might see a bigger Oregon contingent. I'm not sure now that the UCLA students are back in school. UCLA wasn't in school this whole time. They just got back to school this week. So the students might get their first taste of what it's like to party on a tailgate day, go stand behind the bench, scream at the Oregon fans. It's a top 10 team. This isn't like a Big Ten team like Iowa or Minnesota who's going to bring their largest contingent on any road game to the UCLA game, or they might see a win and see in an iconic venue. I still think there's more UCLA fans because they showed a little more promise against LSU. There was a decent contingent of UCLA fans at LSU, for crying out loud. They didn't overwhelm Death Valley, but a lot of fans came, and I still think there will be some support when the Bruins play the Ducks. Now, if it's 50-50, that might be ugly, but I still think there's more Bruins fans than Ducks fans.
I can see that. I mean, and I agree. I mean, Pasadena, the scenery is definitely one of the best. Definitely the scenery around the stadium. It's definitely always one of the best. I mean, there's very few. I mean, guys like BYU maybe has really good scenery around it, but there's very few that have it like Pasadena does. And Troy, be nice. Be nice, Troy.
More people are tarps. I'm frustrated they still have the tarps on. There's been some instances where they didn't need the tarps in recent years. The 2022 UCLA USC game, they did not need the tarps. And they had the tarps. They had to sell it. They did not need the tarps. There's probably some games this year they don't need the tarps. And I'm kind of tired of them. If I had scissors and I could go cut it up and just be like, I'm done with it, I would. I'm done. But it is nice to see it all kind of congested together and looking cool. And then you see UCLA and it looks full. It's cool. But, even being at LSU, when there's 100,000 people and it still didn't look full, it's okay. People leave early at college football games when it's hot or it's close. So I don't want to, after seeing how hot it was at LSU and the fans leaving, I'm not going to rag on LA fans anymore. Because I saw some of the best fans in the country do the same thing under similar conditions in a close game. They left, right? In a toss-up game at the time. So more people with tarps, there'll be people, but, the tarps can be cool, but I want to cut them up. I'm done with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're guilty of ragging on UCLA for the tarps.
Everybody has. Everybody has. But I just have to say, hey, people, maybe not Autzen. Autzen's a great venue. I've never been, but, it speaks for itself. But, other places, best in the country, if it's hot, they won't show up. I was at the least attended UCLA game. The one in 22 when they played Bowling Green, and it was 100 degrees at an 11 a.m. kickoff. There was nobody there. I can tell you there's nobody there. In a non-COVID, it was brutal. But, in Pasadena in September, early October, when it's hot, it is miserable baking in the sun for those 12:30 kicks. Miserable.
85 Saturday.
85 for an 8 p.m. kick, and it won't be that hot when we get there. We'll be in jackets, and I'll be in winter clothes.
It'd be about, 60, 65?
60 with a little breeze, probably.
Stop with your 8 p.m. kickoff. It's 10 p.m. for me.
Well,
it's one of those games again. I told people this would happen. We were going to get these after dark games. It was going to happen a couple times.
I didn't think we'd get one past. I thought for sure the Big Ten was going to shy away. We wouldn't get anything past 5 p.m. Pacific.
I was a little shocked with the 8 p.m. Like latest, it's usually 7:30. I've never seen like an 8 p.m. kick local in Southern California, right? Because you get down the East Coast, prime time, it's just a little different. The further away you go from the West Coast. But an 8 p.m. kick in the Rose Bowl, oof.
It's rough.
But I mean, it's not hot, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
It makes sense though. Big Ten, they're like, hey, we're going to take this time slot. And that's what I said, why it's going to happen here and there. They're going to take that time slot. Why not? Cash in. Then you get like 4 to 5 time slots during the day instead of your normal 2 or 3. So, but
Captain's right. 11 p.m. It's whatever, but football season's short.
That's true. At least it is Saturday night. I mean,
it is.
At least it's a Saturday night. So, not the worst thing in the world, but God, that post game is going to be brutal, Spaz.
For us, all of us doing that post game, we're like,
that post game's going to be brutal.
The next week when the baseball playoffs start and that UCLA game's at 9 a.m. at Penn State, all right, boom, cool. We're going to watch all the rest of the sports that day. This one, it's like, what do I do? Do I go? Do I watch? Do I stay at home so I can go straight and record right after? It'll be midnight. I don't really know what to do.
At least I have these jokers texting like just constantly. If something goes wrong, they all panic and freak out and start just texting constantly. Because 2 years ago we had the Stanford game. Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. We had the Stanford game. It was one of those, and I was on the East Coast. I fell asleep, and it was just waiting for the post game. I woke up at like 5 a.m. I was like, "Oops, I just missed it." I fell asleep during like the third quarter. I was like, "Yeah, brutal. Football season is too short, though. I mean, geez, it's already week 4.
It's week 4, but now the semifinals are after New Year's Day. Now it's getting longer. It's pushing into February. NFL's pushing into March, probably at some point when they go with 18 games. It's getting there. It is working its way there.
I'm all for it. Trust me, because as much as people complain here, like certain people on my end go, football season, great. Here we go. We know what he's doing. He's going to be doing this stuff. It's like it only lasts like 3.5 months. a year. This isn't baseball where it goes on, or basketball where it goes on like over half the year.
I think basketball season lasts way too long. It doesn't need to drag on that long. I think college basketball should be longer. The NBA, they just need to wait till baseball's done. More football has happened. They just got to wait a little bit. I don't know why they want to own it.
I just don't think you need to play every team like 4 or 5 times. I know people say, well, it's a statistic-driven game more than anything or whatever, baseball and basketball. But I'm like, I don't think you need to play every team 4 or 5 times. I'm sorry. You don't. If you beat them twice, you're better than them. Like, deal with it. Yes, we know, Svez. You're going to be in Michigan State. Lucky.
Yeah.
Lucky. You get to welcome home Jonathan Smith.
Coming off, too, that according to one of my sources says that we've got a really good special jersey coming for the Big Ten home debut.
Ooh.
Oh, I was going to say.
Are they readable? Can you read them? Are they legible?
Yes.
I was going to say, is it one of the breast cancer awareness ones? One of the pink ones?
I don't know. He just said it's a special uniform. You guys are going to love what we bring out from Michigan State.
I'm all for it. Then again, we're always for new uniforms. UCLA, though, keeps the traditional look. Minus some updates and tweaks and stuff here and there. But, you guys keep the tradition around. Oregon just is like...
What did we go with? The generic green for UCLA this week?
I think I saw it, and I don't even remember what it was now. It kind of real quick over my head. I'll just see it on Saturday. It's like, I'll just see it. Well, let's do this then. This has been pretty good, and I think we're all kind of, even with you, Zach, we're all on the same page. As long as Oregon doesn't get in its own way, unless something just crazy happens, it could be a long day for UCLA.
It very much could. The 25-point spread, that's nuts. But Oregon can get, under Dan Lanning, they just blow out teams in a hurry, right? It's one of those games where it's like, oh, it was decent, and then boom, like, wow. It could be extremely quick into a blowout in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
This game could be over very early.
Yeah.
I would like to see I would love nothing more than to see Jay Harris and Jaden Lamar and Dante Moore from the third quarter, from halftime forward.
Oh yeah.
If Dante plays,
sorry about stealing Dante Moore. Also, sorry about that. He came back home.
I mean, yes. Well, we stole him first. We kind of broke him, and then he left.
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
You guys. Oh, that was a rough year for him. I mean, he got benched for Garbers.
Well, Garbers started he was the starter. Dante looked fine,
right.
but Garbers was the initial starter. Dante wasn't right. He throws much better than Garbers. Like, he throws a beautiful ball, but the maturation of a quarterback, Garbers has that. He's been around the block 4 or 5 years now. He has it, and when it comes to being hit and having protection, Dante had happy feet. Garbers, he might a little bit, but he was ready to take a hit in the pocket and could handle it again until he was literally
he's more willing to take the hit.
Yeah, I agree with that. When you're a freshman, you are not ready to start. Even in the Pac-12, true freshmen generally are not ready to start.
You need the best offensive line. So it's just what you're learning is deciphering. And he had to run around, figure out the whole offense, and then read the defense. And then, oh, by the way, your first option is not going to be there because it's getting blown up right now. And more often than not, it just went to the opposite team. He couldn't hold on to the ball. He has a bright young future. I think he is going to be really good. It just unfortunately did not happen to be at UCLA for the long term.
That's fair. I mean, that's why when he came back to us and Dylan Gabriel, we were like, what? And then the quarterback room we already have, and then Achilles Smith next year. I was like, this is ridiculous. That means we're going to lose a couple quarterbacks coming up. I mean,
They might go their way down to
transfer.
Pasadena. We'll find out.
Yeah, they're going to transfer. You know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
This has been good. I know you've got to go to here soon too, and I'm not going to put you on the spot because you're probably going to do your own game prediction coming up. So I won't put you on the spot. But if you want to, Spaz, you know what time it is.
It's score prediction time.
And I don't know where to take this one. To be honest, I have no idea. Ooh.
I think for me, it's how many quarters will this game be competitive? You know, I haven't figured out, really done and taken a deep dive into what actually might be the final score. Because it could be close or it could be that score and then plus 25, right? I think UCLA does put forth a good effort, and they maybe build off the last week at LSU, and they keep it competitive for even longer. Now, UCLA has given up a touchdown on the opposing drive the first 3 games. If Oregon does that and they're up 7-0, it'll get ugly early. If UCLA has the ball first and scores, if Oregon doesn't score on the opening drive, then this game will be competitive into the third, probably fourth quarter. But if Oregon scores early, twice early, Oregon by 30. That's if they score early. I guess that's the best I can give you for a score prediction for now.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't like to put. At least you weren't Nick Cody, the former Oregon O lineman, who put 61-0 over the Beavers, which actually wasn't maybe too far off. Technically,
it wasn't too far.
Yeah. In hindsight, Spaz, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I got it this week. I think with everything we saw with the Oregon State game and another week of having a bye week and being able to get the line even more locked in and stuff, and with the problems that UCLA has had, I don't think they're near at the level of what Oregon State is even at this point from what I've saw. So I think this game's probably they got 55-10.
Ouch.
Oregon.
Then again, Spaz is winning this season, so he hasn't been terribly wrong either. Yeah, I don't know. I'm agreeing with Zach. I think it is. It's like if Oregon goes up 2 scores, even 10-0 or something like that, it's a long day for UCLA. Then how quickly do they call off the dogs in the second half if that happens, where we're not going to score points? Maybe UCLA gets another score. I'm going to leave it as something similar to kind of like Oregon State. I'm going to say 49-17. I don't think we're going to – I think UCLA is going to put up points, but I do think Oregon's just – I think Dan Lanning saw enough for those first 2 games to be like, this is not happening. This is not happening. Especially, no offense, too, is keep chopping. Oregon 16, UCLA 12. Big.
Okay. This isn't a Florida State UCLA.
Yeah, hey, at least UCLA is not Florida State.
Yeah.
Justin Wilcox, way to screw that game up. Jesus. Playing to not lose, but not to win. Anyways, yeah. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is just Dan Lanning's seen enough. He saw enough those first 2 weeks, and you could tell if you watch his pressers, he was pissed. Absolutely pissed. So I think the team has finally realized, hey, that's not Lanning ball.
Yeah, he hasn't had the very nicest press conferences the last couple of weeks.
Hey, I can't blame him. Until the Oregon State one. Then it was like, okay, that's what I want to see. But now the same thing. I need to see consistency. Like Zach wants to see UCLA continue to do improvements. We need to see that type of consistency from Oregon to feel confident. We have another 10-point game or something. I'd be like, yeesh, or something like that. Whether it's the defense or the offense, I don't know. At that point, depending on score. But yeah. Well, any final thoughts, gentlemen? The UCLA Oregon game coming up this Saturday, 8 p.m. Pacific kickoff. Ugh, gross.
I think we'll learn a lot about both teams. I think we'll learn a lot about both teams, right? UCLA is in the middle of their gauntlet. They played at LSU, arguably maybe the weakest of the three teams they get to play. They play Oregon, the best, I think, of the three teams they get to play. It's at LSU, Oregon at home, at Penn State, 3 consecutive weeks. If UCLA improves, looks better, and it's a 3-score game, but they competed and they just weren't as good, then we learn a lot about UCLA. And if Oregon was not sloppy, then that's probably good for both sides. If UCLA competes, Oregon sloppy, then Oregon is fraudulent. If the Bruins are not competitive, then I'm not sure anybody will watch my podcast if I talk football for the rest of the year. It would be brutal. The winnable games are coming in the back half, but it might be a couple weeks until that happens. So we will find out. This is a knowledge game because Oregon's already messed around and nearly lost. I'm not saying that'll happen, but they're just playing down to their competition. Then they're not a national championship team, I think, right? We've seen other teams make their way into the CFP, but those teams don't win the championship. And Oregon is clear top 3 preseason. So they come around, don't mess around. If UCLA handles it for a couple of quarters, I think both teams would be proud.
Yeah. That is a brutal stretch, though. Yeah, you had Indiana, one that turned into be more brutal than you thought, but then at LSU or
maybe Indiana's the best of the 4.
Yeah, I was like at Penn State too. It's like, oh yeah, that's brutal. That is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Baz, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm just ready for the weekend. Ready to watch some football and
Behind your eyelids again?
Yeah, that too.
I miss this, Baz.
I tend to watch it by my lips sometimes. But I think it'll be good. It'll be a good, fun weekend. Looking forward to it. And looking forward to next weekend. I get to go to Eugene. First Big Ten game at Autzen. I'm just jacked. It can't get here any sooner. 9 days. So I'm ready.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to this weekend. And again, familiar foe. Oregon's played UCLA, obviously, more times than I can think right now. But new conference, new logos, new eras. I'm all for it. So once again, Zach, thank you very much for all the time that you've given us tonight, because I know you've got things to go do. So we appreciate your time and giving us your inside knowledge on UCLA and the Bruins. And I'd say best of luck this weekend, but no, hopefully not.
Well, I didn't realize it, but I'm wearing a green polo. I didn't really think it through, but here we are. Thanks for having me on.
No blue, nothing like that. Nothing, yeah.
That's fine.
I have blue. I just didn't wear it now.
All right. Well, then,
thank you,
everyone. No, we appreciate it. Again, every second that someone gives on this show to talk their team and in a preview manner, we appreciate it highly. Everyone in the chat,
thank you, Captain.
Thank you for showing up too. And
Troy and everybody that came out tonight, Jackson. Thank you guys for stopping by. And we'll see you Sunday morning.
Sunday morning, yeah, Sunday morning for the post game. And everyone do check out Zach, though, on Locked On UCLA. Jackson has dropped that link in the chat a couple times at least. So definitely check him out there over on the Locked On Network. And other than that, we'll see you guys post-game.